Okay, let's talk about the economy today. Donald Trump has been touting the current economy as the best ever. Trump has been bragging about how strong the economy is in general. He says it's the best it's ever been for Black Americans, the best it's ever been for Hispanic Americans. And he usually points to unemployment rates and the stock market being high. And yet at the same time, 40% of the population is still struggling just to pay their basic bills every single month, which is more than 100 million people in this country. How is it possible that we have the best economy ever and 40% of the population is struggling to pay their bills? And to really understand this, you actually have to zoom out because it's bigger than Trump. Of course, when Trump says something like this is the best economy ever, it's meaningless political hyperbole. But there's a deeper analysis to be done here that is beyond left right politics, or at least it's beyond Donald Trump. So let's do it. It's true that the economic expansion that the US has seen dating back to the beginning of Barack Obama's presidency is on paper the longest economic expansion in the history of the United States of America. That's true as defined as we define expansions. And still, we know that a huge portion of the country can't even afford an unexpected $400 emergency expense. How is it possible that both are true? The stock market is at record highs. The unemployment rate is historically at its lows. And yet, there are a record number of people who are 90 days or more behind on car payments, which is a concerning indicator that can predict economic trouble. And that number continues to climb every single month. That's not good. How can there be signals on paper that things are so good, and at the same time, nearly half the country can't pay its bills? And the answer effectively boils down to one word, if we need to boil it down to one word, and that word is inequality. It's a little simplistic, but in a sense, it's all about that one word, inequality. I'll explain. The economic expansion dating back to Obama has been hugely unequal. The gains in the stock market that we've seen dating back to Obama are hugely concentrated in a very small portion of the population that owns the vast majority of the stock. So for a huge number of people, even though on paper the stock market is way, way, way up, it does very little for a huge number of people that don't own any or almost any shares of stock. Wage growth has gone mostly to the upper tier. Net worth growth has gone mostly to the upper tier. Stagnant wages on the lower tier. So again, on paper, you can come up with broad averages that look good or at least look okay. But for a huge portion of the country, cost of living has continued to go up, but their inflation adjusted wages have not. So they can't pay their bills, even though on paper they should be okay. Unemployment is low and the stock market is high, just as very little for a lot of the people living in the United States of America. So when you go all the way back to 1989, 30 years ago, the bottom half of the country is less wealthy today, inflation adjusted, than they were 30 years ago. This is stunning, given the economic growth that in total the United States has seen in the last 30 years. And the explanation is inequality, or specifically unequal growth in almost every aspect of the United States economy. And the problem with this is that the economy is, in a sense, hanging by a thread. Even though so many numbers look good, as Donald Trump talks about, there are like 100 million people in this country for whom even a mild economic setback in the broader economy can push them into a completely unsustainable financial situation. This could include a bankruptcy. This could include having to rack up crushing credit card debt at high interest. This could include a home foreclosure or an eviction from a place that they rent, vehicle repossession. And of course, remember that in the back of our minds is the possibility that a medical bill could bankrupt us completely. Our health insurance system fundamentally weakens the economy. Because of the system that we have, people who are even in an okay financial position are still at risk of losing everything because of unexpected medical bills that may not be covered by their insurance. That's how the system works. That's how the country works, which sheds a lot of light on the reality that our health insurance system is an economic liability beyond just being a moral and ethical liability. So the thing about all of this is that because these things are so political, each president, each party, they always want to take credit for any wins they can take credit for. They want to shirk responsibility for any of the losses that they can successfully shirk responsibility for. That we end up unable to have the real serious conversation as a result. This is actually bigger than Republicans and Democrats. Now, it's true. It's not totally apolitical. It's true that historically, Democrats are better than Republicans in terms of stock market returns, but that doesn't affect everybody equally. It's true that historically, Democrats are better than Republicans in terms of the average unemployment rate during their presidency. But that doesn't actually tell us whether people are making a living wage or whether they have to work multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. By the standards we use, Democrats are better than Republicans, but unfortunately, those standards fall very, very short. And these are just bigger issues that don't even enter into the political election cycles that we have of 2, 4, and 6 years. 2 years for the House of Representatives, 4 years for the president, and 6 years for the U.S. Senate, respectively. Automation and technological unemployment is one of those issues. Inequality is another one of those issues. Education costs are another issue that around the margins you will hear politicians talk about, but nothing serious has been done to deal with that. The healthcare system, fortunately, it's entering more into the political discussion, particularly since 2010 and Obamacare and Bernie Sanders mainstreaming the idea of Medicare for all in 2016. But this is why you hear the economy is the best ever. And there are actually some numbers that sort of seem to reflect that in some way, but yet almost half the country is hanging by a thread. That's not going to change. Listen, if the stock market, if the Dow goes to 30,000, still a huge portion of the country will be at risk of a $400 unexpected expense, throwing their financial situation into total disrepair. You are not going to change that if the unemployment rate goes from 3.8 to 3.7%. Okay, these are bigger systemic issues. And inequality, if I had to sum it up in one word, tells us a lot about why this is the case. Let me know what you think. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. Today's sponsor is Skillshare, and I'm excited to tell you that everybody in our audience is getting 2 entire months of free access to Skillshare when you click the link underneath this video. Skillshare is the site that offers over 25,000 online courses on almost any topic you can imagine: cooking, meditation, photography, video editing, Photoshop, managing a small business, almost an endless list. And whether you're trying to get ahead in your career, maybe you want to learn new skills that will make you better at your job, you might just be exploring a new hobby and you're trying to find new ways to be creative in your personal time, Skillshare's the perfect place to fully immerse yourself in whatever you're trying to learn. I really enjoyed the class on more advanced video editing techniques because it's something I've been wanting to improve at, but have been very busy hosting the David Pakman Show for the last few years. Once again, the David Pakman Show is giving you 2 whole months of access to every single class offered by Skillshare. After those 2 months, if you want to keep your subscription, Skillshare super affordable at less than $10 a month. Get better at whatever it is that you're passionate about, or discover something brand new that you didn't even know that you would love, and join Skillshare's other 7 million users by clicking the link underneath this video.